My first top tip for business would be to identify that uncertainty isn't the problem. It is your ability at handling uncertainty. And it's a really necessary part of the reframe, because if we keep saying or casting uncertainty as the villain or the end-of-level baddie, we will always be subject to its powers. But if we accept that our ability for managing uncertainty is something that we can get a handle on and can change, then we can begin to invest in it and everything will begin to change. Secondly is understanding its effects. So we've asked just over 20,000 people to describe the impact of uncertainty. 98% of them all use a negative term. However, of the thousands of adjectives we were given, they could all be grouped into 3 areas. The words like anxiety and fear and sleeplessness could all be summed up as a fear. There was a huge group of can't make up my mind, circular decision making, WTF, just confused. So we called that fog. And the third group was I'm stuck, I feel purposelessness, I've lost my mojo. So stasis. So fear, fog and stasis is not a nice thing to talk about. They're uncomfortable emotions. Usually when we talk about uncertainty at work, we talk about hybrid working and new technologies, which are important as well. But it's really necessary to bring both the brain and the body to this party. Uncertainty is a psychobiological issue. So we have to connect brain and body. And what's useful, I think, to leaders in business to know is that beneath the surface, under the iceberg, fear, fog and stasis are not nice. So when we are talking about uncertainty, it's important to understand this is its emotional effect. So then thirdly, the way out of this has to be in a similar frame. The techniques that really work are around embodied cognition. So understanding that we make decisions by our body, and the best decisions we make when our body and our mind are working in union together. One of the key skills of that is something known as interoception. It's the 8th sense. If leaders haven't heard of it, it really warrants looking up. Spell check still can't really always identify it. It's a very new idea in neuroscience right now. And it's essentially your internal system of interpreting sensations. So kids have bad interoception because they don't know whether they need a wee or whether they're feeling worried. Adults with good interoception can feel their own heartbeat. They can make a judgment as to whether that rising tide of panic is because a deadline is looming or because something personal is going on, and then they can assess, course correct, and hold an important negotiation or important space within it. So these kind of inner navigation systems are fundamental for uncertainty. And then lastly, the ways out of it. If it affects people in anxiety and fear, which it does, to try and push people to confidence doesn't seem to work. This is not a just feel the fear and do it anyway. That can often break people. What you can do, though, is teach techniques of emotional regulation. And that's how you can get people past that first aspect of uncertainty's impact. And the second, if people are feeling confused, the fog that we talked about, again, if you just try and push people to clarity, that will undermine their experience of uncertainty and also miss out on the real benefit. And this is where the space to play and curiosity comes, because uncertainty will drive an adaptive mindset. And that's really the core aspect of this being around growth. So you can't just move from fear to bravery, but you can move from fear to action and emotional regulation. Similarly, you can't move from fog to clarity, but you can move from fog into a space of agility. And lastly, the really difficult one, when people feel stuck in response to uncertainty, that's very, very hard to move people through. And if you just try and force some momentum, then that really is how you can break people. And there isn't a business out there who's not being affected by burnout. The thing we found, surprisingly, was what gets people out of a sense of stuckness is a sense of connection. Connection to themselves, connection to the team around them, connection to the purpose of the organization, sometimes just connection to a commercial goal, but a connection to something that's more than just them. And that every time is what unlocks people out of those 3 negative states into 3 really useful, positive and valuable ones. I've seen play work profoundly well as a way of exploring uncertainty, as a way of increasing creativity, and to get people on the right side of this conversation, right? I think that uncertainty is missold as a negative. I think I understand why it is. We did a semantic review of this, and it's about 80% of the times we ever see the word, it's always housed in a negative sentiment. Part 1 of the job is just to start regularly embracing the positive upsides of uncertainty, that it is a driver of generative growth, that it's a place for exploring possibility. And some of the ways of doing that is through play, curiosity, a sense of adventure, a challenge, And we've seen some firms do some really fun things. Once they've got their heads around it, all of a sudden the oppressiveness, because that's the way uncertainty feels, and of course, because it's associated with so many news headlines that have made us feel pretty awful. But you can begin to say, well, let's spend a bit of time not knowing. Let's go into a place that we don't have all the answers for. And so I've seen some really good fun role plays where we've put best and worst scenarios, and then people have to make up the scenarios that have taken them there. So it's classic scenario planning, but you're stepping out into the unknown. We've seen some really fun job swaps where people have both done reverse mentoring, and then people have stepped into the other person's roles in that day. And it's the fun bit when you're just going around day to day, but then when you're given a chance to really make a decision, right, the nervousness comes up. A lot of my work has been around young people. So not just giving young people mentoring opportunities, but shadowing opportunities, giving young people really involved democratic decisions, and people will be terrified and then really amazed and relieved and inspired when young people make glorious and brilliant decisions. And in this whole space of playfully embracing the unknown, what you really begin to get to is new ideas. Because so often we are it's so hard to disentangle wisdom and experience and the brain's tendency for the fastest track to get to a place that we've gone before, and a genuinely new idea. And then you all know the feeling of a genuinely new idea when it actually emerges, and the thrill that comes with. And I believe that genuinely new ideas more often than not come from negative space. But that's not a space that most of us are that comfortable in. And by negative, I don't mean bad. I mean the unusual, unexpected, the space at the edges, the bits in the shadows outside of the spotlight. And so that comes from getting lost, not knowing your way back, not having all the pieces in the puzzle, having the wrong person in the job, not knowing what the brief is. There's lots of different ways that firms can set safe and playful space for uncertainty, and its myriad of benefits to our curiosity levels. So in the process of creating this toolkit for uncertainty, we partnered up with a really niche lab called the Decision Making in Uncertainty Laboratory at University College London. And they sit within brain sciences, and that's the area that UCL is world renowned for. And after 10 years, the Decision Making in Uncertainty Lab was brought into being after the financial collapse to try and understand why an industry so predicated on making predictions failed to make accurate predictions. So this is 10 years, right, of scientific research and understanding, and the cutting edge, groundbreaking theory they came up with is called conviction narrative theory, or CNT, which just goes to show what a bunch of scientists they are, because they didn't see that one coming. And in CNT, it takes the principle of what's known as embodied cognition, which is the science way for talking about your gut instinct. In cognitive science, embodied cognition is thought to be this radical idea because it argues essentially we've got two brains, two areas of equal decision making. And the premise is this: your body picks up about 50 million bits of information at the same time that your brain can deal with 50. So 50 million to 50, that's the compression rate. So when you walk in a room and you really know if you're safe, or if you can trust someone, or the temperature, or whatever it is, your body's doing all of these readings whilst your brain's still deciding what it wants to drink. Okay, so this is how, in times of uncertainty, if we can tap into, again, Harvard Business Review, so many places have called out over the last 2 years, the key tool for uncertainty is intuition or gut instinct. What CNT tells us is that the brain doesn't worry about abstract concepts like time. So you can use conviction narrative theory to make decisions about an uncertain future. So you take yourself now, think of an uncertainty that you're facing. It could be what you're having for tea, it could be a parenting dilemma, it could be a professional challenge or a choice that you have to make. So if you can now think about a decision path in the future, so there you are weighing up the two options for lunch, or whether or not you're going to discipline your children or reward your children or whatever it's going to be, you put yourself into one of those scenarios. You simulate it as much as you possibly can. You imagine the things that might be said and done, but really what you're trying to do is get in touch with how it feels. Because your body will listen to the signals from your brain. It's why if you spend a lot of time worrying about something that happened ages ago, you'll go back to that same feeling of anxiety. Or if you spend too much time worrying about something you're genuinely scared of, your body will catch up and start to feel scared too. So you can push yourself into the exact future state of this decision, know that your brain holds nothing for abstract concepts like time, and the sensations in your body will be akin to what they would be were you experiencing it then. So then you can come back from the future and say, how did it feel? Well, it didn't feel very nice when I did option A. What felt really good was option B. And you have an exact reading of what your body's senses are going to determine on a future state, giving you more information that you would have now about a future indecision or uncertainty in the present moment. Which they explained to me. It took them a while to explain it to me in a way that I understood, until eventually I was like, are you talking about time travel and role play? They said largely, yes. So that's coming from some of the most cutting-edge science minds in uncertainty. But basically, like kids, imagining future states and seeing how they feel and bringing those feelings back to the present state to make a better decision in uncertainty.